When I reviewed the Magic Keyboard last month, I ended up being quite disappointed. While I thought it added a lot of functionality to the iPad Pro, I didn't think it was worth its $300 price point, and I didn't think it was good enough to replace my laptop. And so I'd given up on the concept of replacing my laptop with an iPad. Until this happened. This is the iPad 7th generation, and I think it's significantly better in replacing your laptop. Confused? Let me explain. Okay, the design of the iPad 7th generation is decidedly last generation. It doesn't have the cool flat edges of the iPad Pro. It's got larger bezels, and generally it looks like an older iPad. It's got more similarities to the iPad Air released back in 2016 than it does to a lot of the iPad Pros released since 2017. Apple just hasn't trickled down a lot of the design language that they use in their iPad Pro. And that makes this look decidedly worse, but it doesn't look bad. It still has a sturdy aluminum build, it still has relatively small bezels, and it's light enough to hold in one hand comfortably. Now, the display itself is decidedly lacking. While colors are relatively good, I've found that there's a lot of glare that comes off the display, and it doesn't get bright enough to work outside with it. The display is also not laminated, meaning that there's a noticeable gap between the glass panel and the display underneath. And that adds to the glare issue, and it also makes it feel less premium. For example, writing on it with the Apple Pencil makes this empty, hollow noise when you tap against the screen, and where you put your pen is not directly on the display, but it feels like there's a space. This is just a significantly worse experience than you'd get on the iPad Pro with the Apple Pencil 2. The speaker on the bottom of the iPad is decent, but it doesn't compare to the quad speaker setup in the iPad Pro. And so watching movies on this is just okay. And you might want to opt instead for headphones, but thankfully you can do so with a 3.5mm headphone jack. Performance, while in day-to-day use is quite good, it probably won't stand up to the iPad Pro, especially if you plan on using photo or video editing apps, or anything more heavy. With all of that in consideration, why would I prefer the iPad 7th generation over the iPad Pro? Well, this is a big reason. This is the Logitech Combo Touch keyboard, and it comes in two parts. First, a pretty standard case that clips onto the back of your iPad and offers a kickstand. Second, the keyboard itself, which magnetizes to the bottom of your iPad and connects via 3 pogo pins on the bottom of the iPad. Now, this might look quite similar to the Surface Pro with its type cover, and that's one of the reasons why I really love this. I admit I might have a bias because I love Surface devices, but let me explain why I think this might be a better solution than the iPad Pro plus Magic Keyboard. First, this kickstand. This kickstand is a more traditional way of holding up the iPad, but it also enables a lot more viewing angles than the iPad Pro does. And you can comfortably set it on your knees when you're sitting on the couch with your knees up. If you're taller and you're setting it on a lower surface, then you might be able to scoot it closer to you than you would be able to with the Magic Keyboard. You also have the ability to detach the keyboard from the case itself, but still use the kickstand to prop it up and watch movies. You didn't have that option on the Magic Keyboard. The trackpad is great, and gesture navigation works great, and it's also larger than that on the Magic Keyboard. And the typing experience itself is excellent. It doesn't have the same premium switches of the Magic Keyboard, but it feels a lot more similar to the Surface type cover, if a little bit cheaper feeling. There's a completely full keyboard layout, even if the top row's keys only function as Control and not traditional F keys. And now for the last and most obvious reason why you would choose something like this over the Magic Keyboard and the iPad Pro: the cost. The iPad Pro is $800 and the Magic Keyboard $300, meaning you're paying $1,100 or more than a MacBook Air for the iPad Pro with a keyboard. Whereas for this, the tablet itself is $330 and the keyboard $150, meaning you're paying less than $500 or less than half for what I would argue is sometimes a better experience and sometimes a worse experience. It might not feel quite as premium, but I prefer using this over the iPad Pro and Magic Keyboard. If you plan on using your iPad as a laptop replacement and you don't plan on editing videos on it, maybe you're a student that wants to use your iPad for notes in class, or maybe like me, you're a blogger that wants to type up notes on an article before finalizing, then the iPad 7th generation is an excellent solution for you. Not only does it cover most of the bases that the iPad Pro does, but it does at a significantly cheaper price, an even cheaper price than a lot of decent laptops. Before you run out and buy it though, keep in mind that Apple will likely release the successor to the iPad 7th generation in September. Who knows what will be new with that, but if you need something right now, you should go out and buy the iPad 7th generation. Also, remember that quite often there are discounts for the iPad 7th generation at sites like Best Buy, so keep an eye open for those, and you might be able to get a great deal, like $250 for the iPad 7th generation. I was incredibly impressed with the iPad 7th generation and the Logitech Combo Touch keyboard, enough so to give up my iPad Pro for it. But what are your thoughts? If you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe. If you have your own comments, be sure to leave them below. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.